If you can think of starting your business like a movie, maybe there's something to that, because that's a story that I can imagine in like the beginning of a movie, right? A down on his luck cartoonist animator, he's trying to get this fledgling studio off the ground. His only success is been taken to court and he's lost the court case. But then he's got an idea, and that's at 30 minutes. He draws the Mickey Mouse, and it's like, that's my star. I'm going to make him a star, And that's a movie about, a man and a mouse.
Yeah.
That's like, if you can think in terms of like, how is your business a movie? What would be the movie version of your business?
No one makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity business. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bippity Boppity Business. I'm your host, Rita, and today I'm joined with Geoffrey Golden. Geoffrey, how are you?
Doing good. Nice to be on a podcast with someone else with an alliterative first name, with an alliterative name.
Right.
It makes all the difference. GGRR. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like the alliteration theme. I'm very much a fan of that. And I'm glad you noticed that. As a writer, that makes me, like, that you are that writer that can notice that for me. It makes me so happy.
I feel like we're all named like Stan Lee would name characters.
Oh my gosh.
Like, Rita, Geoffrey Golden, okay, Peter Parker. It's like it's always an alliterative with him. It's always the same first and last initial.
That makes me so happy, because if the fact that my name was anywhere near a sentence with Stan Lee's name in it is just, I'm good. Like, I can like end my career. It's fine. I'm just kidding. But for anyone listening, to give you some context, Geoffrey Golden is a narrative designer and game creator based in LA, Los Angeles, sunny California. And he's written for some amazing companies like Capcom, Ubisoft, Square Enix, Disney, wonder why he's here, and some other amazing indie studios around the world. And today we're bringing him here to bring us into the world of immersive writing and storytelling, not just from a wonderful game creation background experience, but also with some of his experience with a newsletter that he runs called Adventure Snack. But before we dive into all of that, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about something I'm focusing on with the next few episodes of the show, which is this idea of passive followers turning into super fans, which then turn to super consumers. And all of that has to do with storytelling. But I would like to know from you, Geoffrey, what were you a super fan of growing up, and how has that influenced the work that you're doing today?
I am the visual embodiment of super fan to consumer. In this moment, I am wearing a Muppets shirt from, what is that, the brand? I think Cake Worth. And that is definitely a media property that I've been a super fan of my whole life. My first memory as a child was they had, my dad used to tape the Muppet Show on VHS, so he would tape it off of local TV. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, but it was always on Canadian TV. We always would get the Canadian channels for whatever reason. I guess just across the lake. Yeah. And he would record them and compilations of them and put them onto tape. And so my earliest memory is maybe I was 3 years old, something like that, and grabbing those tapes from the shelf and putting them in the VCR. My mom claims I was the only one in the house who knew how to use the VCR properly. I love the Muppets. I always have. I think there are a lot of things I like about them. One is just the chaos energy, and it's the overlap of the chaos energy and the creative energy. Yeah. I always find myself wanting to be in situations where those two things overlap, and I think it's because of the influence of the Muppets. I love that, like, group of people coming together to put on a show that they don't quite know how to put on. You know,
Yes.
they're the outsiders, they're the weirdos, and eventually they can win. Eventually they'll win the day, but they have to sort of struggle against a crowd that doesn't understand them. But I just love that they exemplify this idea of like, if you build it, they will come. If you are like true to your what your core values as an artist, like, you know, with Fozzie Bear, you know, needing to tell these horrible, you know, knock knock jokes, and Gonzo needing to be shot from a cannon, like none of it should work.
Right.
But it all does, by hook or by crook of Gonzo's nose. It all somehow works. And I really relate to that as an artist and as a creator. For years I ran a business, a publishing house with my partner, where it was a comedy book publishing house called The Devastator, and we gathered writers and artists from The Daily Show, The Onion, Adult Swim, and we were very much like the Muppets in a sense. We were definitely putting on a show that we didn't quite know how to put on, making incredible but also incredibly weird stuff for these weird novelty books.
Yeah, one of those being the one that we talked about the last time we met, which you guys have to hear this. Talk about this for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wrote, so you know, when you go to the Disney parks, you'll see those books that are like, you know, 30 years of Imagineering, or like John Hench's like greatest hits in like an art book. So I wrote one called Dream It, Screw It. These were the ideas of Dip Disney, Walt Disney's less talented cousin, who was a must-hire because he was cousins with Walt. And he was at the company for 30-some years and came up with many, many terrible ideas that were never used. And so I worked with some incredible indie artists to sort of conceptualize, to draw the concept art for what these things could be. And sort of we sort of traced Dip's journey through the years of Disney history to sort of see like how he fit in and some of the fads he followed, and sort of how even with the ideas that were rejected, he still has an influence over the company that maybe he himself doesn't realize. But yeah, it was a lot of silly fun, and as a Disney fan, of course, it was a thrill putting it together. It was so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And just this idea that you were talking about a bit earlier of feeling like that creative weirdo that found a bunch of other creative weirdos to come together and make something eventually that made sense, but sticking to that true core authenticity of whatever it is you guys wanted to do, I think is something that can be translated into a lot of storytelling and messaging and media. This idea of sticking to what Disney says, serving the heart of the story, and whatever that is for your brand or your company, or just for your, you know, for fun, whatever you're creating with your content. I think that's so important today. And a lot of people who are in business have a hard time of serving the heart of a story in a way that feels human and authentic and kind of gives that emotion or feeling that watching the Muppets would, or playing a video game would. And I really want to speak to that immersion and see, like, from your perspective, how can someone creating content in business get that immersion fact in their work based on all of the amazing things that you've done? You can speak to that in whatever way you like, with your newsletter, just for fun, or any advice.
You know, a lot of the businesses that I follow, that I really enjoy, they talk about process. So process is one thing, is one element of story, right? How does your clothing company, you know, how do they source the materials? You know, what are the ethics? What do you believe in, and what steps have you taken, just as an example, you know, in order to make your clothes eco-friendly, or to make your clothes as, you know, stunning as possible? You know, if we're talking about, so like for the Devastator, for example, you know, part of our story as a business was this traveling. We would travel everywhere. We would do 13 or 14 like comic book conventions in a year. And that's part of our story. So we would we would talk about that in our newsletter, talk about our travels in our newsletter, talk about our travels, on social media or what have you, hey, here's our booth set up for this show. We would show pictures of people, various cosplayers holding up our books, in costume, because that was a part of our identity, and that was part of the process of getting the Devastator out there. So I think whatever your business is, you just have to think of it like that, like every element, every piece of like how the business works is part of the business's story. And the business's values those are the parts of the story you want to tell. So our value as the Devastator was, look at this bunch of crazy authors all getting together to make these weird books, right? Well, okay, if that's part of the value, as like, oh, we're on the edge, we're making weird stuff, right? And so seeing those photos of us, on the road, stopped by a giant dinosaur statue or,
Yes.
A big ball of twine or whatever, like that's like funny. It like speaks to our values, and it shows like the process of like what we're doing.
Like being,
so that's how I say it.
Yeah, I think there are companies, especially in the world of B2B, where I've done some work in content strategy wise, where they're almost afraid to show the behind the scenes in the process because it's not perfect enough. It doesn't feel like right to someone that's always used to their I's being dotted and their T's being crossed. But I think part of the story of being able to connect with someone is seeing that process, because the process is what we all can relate to.
Right. We all work.
Yeah.
Most of us work. Well, if your brand is perfection, maybe not, but most of brands aren't usually perfection. Usually you have to be a very high-end luxury brand. I would say, like, another good example in the Disney sphere is Marvel's classic Marvel comics. I don't know how much Marvel you've read growing up. There used to be, maybe it still is around, I haven't read monthly Marvels in a while, but there used to be a soapbox. There used to be like an editor's bullpen where the different editors of Marvel Comics would chat with fans, and they would the editors sort of exemplified this kind of, especially Stan Lee, but there were others too, exemplified this kind of like, oh, if we got a story to tell.
like we've seen some things, let me just bring it to you.
Oh boy, if you think Spider-Man really screwed up with Mary Jane this month, wait till you see what happens next month. That kind of energy, right? And so like having that giving the editors that opportunity to talk to the fans, it served multiple functions, because it tells you the story, it shows you, it gives you the characters in the story, the people, the business owners, the editors, the stakeholders, right? Those are our characters, right? It gives us a sense of like what they do, right? As like, what does it mean to like put together a book? There's stories about this writer is late, always late on deadline. This artist, didn't they do an incredible job this month? I know they're changed to a new pen type, and I think you could tell,
Yeah, and there's always a villain to their story too. Like, what's that thing that they're struggling with, that they're fighting against in their brand?
Yeah, DC Comics, in the case of Marvel, that was always the unspoken or sometimes directly spoken rival.
Right.
That's definitely, these days, that's very much a part of brand stories.
Yes.
It's not what are you for, but what are you against? Because that can lead to a lot of attraction on social media as well.
Right. It all comes down to a story not being a story if there's not a strong point of view or a unique element to it that kind of guides us along and makes us want to keep watching or keep reading and consuming it and wanting to know like what happens next. And I think this is a great segue for your newsletter, Adventure Snack, which is a magnificent idea. I mean, it's an email newsletter that somebody listening would be like, okay, email newsletters, like, Geoffrey, like, what are you doing? Like, what year is this? Like 2003? But no, like, you have to tell us about what it is and like and how it's become so like successful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So Adventure Snack brings adventure into your inbox. So if you remember those choose your path adventure books from the 80s and 90s, I think you're going to really love and connect with Adventure Stack. Basically, it's that type of interactive fiction, but emailed instead of in a book. And they're bite-sized, so you can play them on a lunch break. You can play them, when you're in line at Starbucks, or when you want a quick hit of adventure, of excitement, of fun in the day. That's what Adventure Stack is for. I email them out for free twice a month to my subscribers, and yeah, my subscriber base has grown. I've been writing these for 3 years, and the first email I sent to 25 people, now well over 1,000, and growing every day. It's really remarkable. Literally every day, I open my inbox and new people are subscribing. We've been growing very fast, I'm very fortunate. It's been featured 3 times on Substack, the newsletter host, and of course Substack is very popular.
Yes.
Substack has featured Adventure Stack 3 times, various awards for that. It's been featured at the Indiecade, Indie Games Everywhere Festival, featured at Word Hack, New York City, all these different Twitch and on Hyper RPG. So all these different places.
Yes.
I've played Adventure Stack and talked about it and stuff. It's been really cool.
I love this idea of making your inbox into an adventure. And I think flipping it a little bit to the business side, there's probably a lot of business owners that want to feel like, okay, well, how would I make my email feel like an adventure? So, and I don't know, we can just test this real quick with what I do, like with host coaching, right? If I want to make someone open their email newsletter and be like, okay, this is amazing. Like I want to click to see what happens next. What do you think would be a really cool immersive newsletter experience in that angle?
Yeah, host coaching. Well, we won't use the interactive game necessarily.
Right.
We'll play a little bit more, slightly more traditional, because the Adventure Stack is very a-traditional. I don't really know many other newsletters quite like it.
Yeah.
But for host coaching, so you're hosting, so this is a podcast host coaching.
Right.
Well, I would say you could use audio in interesting ways, embedded audio. So, for example, maybe it's a subject line of something like, hear the transformation. So it's like a little intriguing. It's a little interesting. You open it up and it's like, you see like, it's like a host like doing it's like 2 different audio clips that are embedded into the thing.
Yes.
Right? Or maybe it's one. You start hearing the monologue and you start hearing the host pre-coaching and like all the various things that they're getting wrong, all the extra vocal pauses, all the shyness coming through in the voice, and it like morphs, like the audio like transitions, and slowly but surely like you hear the difference. And it would be really cool if you could do it on a timeline almost. I'm not exactly sure how this would work in an email. I picture it on a website, but I maybe it could work in an email, where it was like basically showing, at the very least, you could show the time codes of like, here's where we started, and then like show the journey of like by time code, here's what I taught him this, I taught him this, I taught him this, and they can actually listen to the transition happen.
Yes.
So that might be one way, but that's telling a story.
I love that. It's so straightforward, but even though for you it's traditional, for somebody listening, they might be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I've never thought of that before. That's so cool. And I've never been the most traditional. And so I'm all about the wild and the eccentric, which I also think is part of the reason why I love doing this podcast so much. It's the Bippity Boppity part, the wild and the eccentric, because something that I admire about Disney and the history of it is Walt Disney himself. And, he was someone, like we talked about this in our last little chat first, that was so good at telling the story of his brand. And he did take eccentric approaches to that. So can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, in terms of what Walt did?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there are famous stories, right? The story on the train coming home after he lost the rights to Oswald, to the rabbit, and he erased the long ears and he drew the ears, the round ears, and created Mickey Mouse. I think that was proven that it wasn't true.
Really?
But it was a great. I think it may have been Iwerks who created his design, Mickey's design. But in terms of what we're talking about here, it's a great story. It's a story that you believe. It's a story. It has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's great because it says, especially later, right after like Mickey has become like a superstar and Oswald has become like sort of an afterthought. It's like, okay, you fight tooth and nail for something, right? It doesn't go your way, but maybe with a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of cleverness, you can go a slightly different direction, and maybe you'll find your fortune. Maybe you'll find something even better, right?
Right.
So that's not just a story. It's not just a story about like how his business works. It's a story about his personality. It's a story about, about business, about like what a business owner needs to do to help their business survive. There's like a lot of layers to it, but it's so simple, right? It all started with a mouse. It's like it's so simple, ingeniously so. But if you can sort of, if you can think of starting your business like a movie, maybe there's something to that, because that's a story that I can imagine in like the beginning of a movie, right? A down on his luck cartoonist animator, he's trying to get this fledgling studio off the ground. His only success is been taken to court and he's lost the court case. But then he's got an idea, and that's at 30 minutes he draws the Mickey Mouse, and it's like, that's my star. I'm going to make him a star, And that's a movie about a man and a mouse.
Yeah. That's
like, if you can think in terms of like, how is your business a movie? What would be the movie version of your business? Those stories, that's invaluable for connecting with your customers.
so amazing. It's like no matter what you do in your business, at the end of the day, there is a star. There's a story to be told, because I always say that businesses are run by humans for humans, no matter what industry you're in. So we can always relate to that. And then there's always somebody that comes in and helps move the storyline along, whether it's a thing or like an event or a person. Somebody always comes in and adds their touch and makes it better. And something that I wanted to talk to you about as well is, we touched on in our prior conversation, you have this idea of the Carpenter perspective. When you go into the work and you add your touch and you make that piece of work or art or a video game better. And I wanted to hear more about that creative process and that mindset from you.
Right. So a lot of my work, I go back and forth between the owner and the producer, like with Adventure Stack. Like, that's like, I can imagine down the line maybe that being a business, but I run it, I own it, and then a lot of my work is client based. So I do run another business, which is I'm a game designer with a design studio.
Yes.
So companies hire me to come in and consult and also write and work on their video games. And before that, I did it for advertising. So when you were asking before, like, how would we do it for my host, that's my ad brain. My copywriting. I still have that. So yeah. So what's my process? So a lot of times when I come into a video game project, usually the game doesn't have a story, like a formal story. They may have characters, artwork that they've done. They'll have what's called a vertical slice. A vertical slice meaning that they have a playable piece of the game, kind of like a demo. Like, they have like a playable piece of the game that looks really polished and it's good, but it doesn't have a lot of levels. It maybe has like 1 or 2 levels, or it's very small, but it gives a player immediately the idea of what this is, So then I'll come in, and I say a Carpenter mindset, because like, basically those things that the developer has already given me, those are the wood planks. Okay. Those are the bricks. That's the cement, right? And what I need to do is use those elements to build a story. because a story has a foundation. We have our characters, right? That's at the base foundation. So, okay, I see this artwork, but who are they? Like, there's no bios, there's no sense of who these people, these characters you're playing as or playing against or killing or whatever. We don't know we don't know what they are. A lot of video games are about killing, and I've done a lot of those. But like, who are they?
Right.
I see background art. Okay, I see like industrial landscapes. It looks dark and foreboding. Okay, well, why is this dark and foreboding? What's the story of this world, right? Let's build the world. And so, like a carpenter or like I'm building a house or whatever, I am just taking the elements, laying them down. I'm drawing blueprints. Blueprints, you got to do blueprints first. You got to do outlines first. Drawing blueprints, getting them approved by the client, and then saying, okay, let's build our house. Let's write dialogue. Let's make bios. Let's do all these things, and we'll build a house. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Amazing to see into the mind of another creator. It's like this opening a portal into all these informations and artifacts from all this experience. It's so cool. So I think something that is so cool to me is your journey to getting to do all of this. I'm sure somebody listening who is such like a huge creative, and they love writing, and maybe they want to shift from business writing into more media and entertainment, kind of like what you're doing, is listening and going like, how can I do that? Like, what's your one piece of like yoga like advice that you would give to that young creator who's just like a little baby Padawan in the creative world and wants to like break out?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. That's funny. Well, yeah, I'd say if they're a young creator, then the first thing they need to do, and this is the advice that every writer gives, every creative probably gives this advice, is they have to do it. I mean, you got to dive in. You're early, you have to work past your early stuff, because your early stuff, when you're older, is going to make you cringe. And it's going to make you cringe because it's really obvious what your ambitions are, who your references are, because you're just copying. In the early days, you look at something and it's like, I want to make that. So you try and you copy it. It's going to be really obvious that you're copying. If you're a writer, maybe your prose isn't going to be as fluid. Maybe, your vocabulary isn't big yet. Maybe, you haven't found your style yet. You haven't found your voice yet. You haven't found what you want to write about. You just know that you have this itch to write. You kind of have to write. You have to do it a lot. 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell will say. You have to put in those hours of just the work in order to get to the point where you are a professional. And the good news is, if you are a young person like I was, I started writing professionally when I was in high school. I had this interesting opportunity. The internet was very young, and I was a big fan of Weird Al Yankovic. And the internet was really young, and there was a website called mp3.com where people, like unsigned musicians, could sign up, upload MP3s onto the website. People would download them, and the site would pay you per download. It was great. And then you could sell CDs and merchandise and stuff. The problem was that their business method was internet advertising, and nobody really knew yet that banner ads and stuff weren't really worth a lot of money. This is a lesson that would be learned over and over again, is that internet advertising is worth less than other forms of ads. But at the time, they were very optimistic. And so we would get paid per play. And, I would write these songs, parodies, because I loved writing stuff. I would write song parodies, perform them, and upload them onto the internet. And I made quite a bit of money doing it. I was interviewed on New Zealand radio. I was #1 on all their comedy charts. Now when I look back on that work, it's like, oh, that's me. I'm very young here. This isn't me at my best. This is me at my baby. These are baby steps, But I needed to do that. I needed to learn what it was like to get feedback from an audience, not always great feedback, I needed to learn, how to work with the people in charge there. There were like legal issues over the parodies. And so I had to learn how to email back and forth with like business people, as a high
Right,
schooler, and
right.
like how to talk to them and, get stuff that was taken down back up and stuff there, as well as just the craft of writing, of songwriting and comedy writing. And, so yeah, that's my origin story. But as I say, so I would just suggest, just do it.
Yeah.
Take those steps and just try. Write essays, or if you're an artist, draw fan art, or maybe, yeah, if you're a writer, draw, write fan story, write fan fiction.
Right, right.
Whatever's accessible to you, whatever makes sense for you to do, just try it and have fun with it, and put in that time, because you got to work past it.
That's amazing. I think I'm definitely in the stage of finding my own voice. I'm really good at helping other people find their voice in podcasting, but all of a sudden when it comes to you, we're always so hypercritical of ourselves and our own work. So it's really reassuring and affirming for me to hear from you that, you had your Weird Al writing moments and all of that stuff too. Because for me, I actually wrote a little mini parody of Little Town from Beauty and the Beast. And I'm still working on it, but it's called LinkedIn Town. And it's about me going through the LinkedIn world, like experiencing like a former theater kid thrown into the world of business on LinkedIn, and what it looks like for me in that lens. It's like LinkedIn Town, it's a digital village every day, all whatever, right? So it's so cool to hear that from you. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to have some fun with a Disney rapid fire question moment, okay? All right.
Let's go. I'm ready.
All right.
Come on, everybody. Here we go! Off to Question Land.
Geoffrey, if you could eat any treat at any of the Disney parks in the world right now, which one would you have and why?
I have not been to the Disney parks in way too long. And so by way too long, I mean since before the pandemic.
Okay.
And so I haven't been to the Avengers land in California. So the first thing that popped into my mind is I would like to have like a giant, like one of the giant meals in Ant-Man.
Yes.
Like I want to have one of those giant Ant-Man meals. I don't know what it is, maybe the pretzel, or is there a giant hot dog? I'm not sure, but I want to just take a photo with me with a giant slice of pizza bigger than my head. Just be like, look, Ma, I made it. I made it to Hank Pym's kitchen.
I freaking made it. Okay, my next question for you. Which Disney character would you like to make a video game about? If somebody came to you, gave you so much money, they're like, here you go, do whatever you want, what would it be about? And yeah, who would it be?
Do whatever I want.
Whatever you want, like literally anything.
No. So the challenge with working with intellectual property, particularly, and Disney is no exception to this, is the notes. It's extensive notes back and forth. Are you saying that I have complete carte blanche?
Yes, like
that nobody, no executive, no suits are going to give me notes. The characters wouldn't do that, or no, we can't do this with this. Okay, great. I'll tell you what would be my dream Disney video game. I have always wanted to write for the Muppets, because it always comes back to the Muppets, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I would like to make a Muppet show creation game where you are Kermit the Frog and you are putting together acts for a Muppet show.
I love.
So it's like a sim Muppets, basically. You are deciding which characters to put in the lineup. You are deciding what their acts are going to be. Maybe they'll pitch you acts, because that's generally what they do in the show. So maybe like Gonzo is like, today I'm going to slip on banana peels into a vat of pudding, But maybe Miss Piggy is like, if you don't put me at the show doing the main number, I'm going to clobber you, frog, And you have to like decide because there's so many decisions you'd have to make, right? Because Piggy will sock you, and that'll like take like half your life bar out. But like Gonzo's act will like could potentially destroy the theater, and that's like a bunch of money that you're gonna need to shell out in order to run the theater. So it's like a sim Muppets theater, basically. I think would be my ideal video game, Disney video game project.
I'm obsessed with that. Okay, I have another fun question for you. A Disney villain approaches you, okay? And they're in business all of a sudden now, and they want to help, a little bit of PR, a little bit of personal rebranding for themselves. Which Disney villain would you like to help rebrand themselves and give them that shining light twist? And how would you do it?
Yeah, which Disney villain am I? Because I've worked in advertising, so I've worked for quite a few villains.
Yes.
Let's see, which Disney villain would I most want to work with? See, one of the challenges is if you do a bad job, which Disney villain is the least likely to like take it out on you? It's like the least capable of like zapping you and like, because immediately I thought of Ursula, because I love Ursula.
Right.
Hang out with Ursula, but she'll turn you into seaweed.
You'll just be a little like sea creature. You won't be able to like talk anymore if you rub her the wrong way.
Yeah. You know what? I'll go. Cool.
I know.
These villains, because they're all really bad.
I know.
They've all done really bad things. So I'm like, who am I gonna pause on? Okay, you know what? Let's do this. Okay. I'll do Cruella de Vil.
Okay.
And I'll say what we'll do is we'll say that these dogs were asking for it. That these were bad dogs.
Bad dogs.
These dogs were vicious, rabid, and that's part of her story, apparently. According to the live action movie, that's part of her story.
Right.
It's like dealing with bad dogs.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, these aren't dogs you love.
No.
And part of the campaign is gonna be like showing like rabid Dalmatians, like biting people. And it's like these dogs, and this isn't gonna be for everybody. These dogs these coats that she's making are gonna be for like rich people, for like the super rich elite who like love furs.
Yes.
And they're gonna like get a kick out of like the cruelty of this campaign. I'm gonna feel really bad. It's gonna be hard to like wake up and look at myself in the morning, but I will. But this is a campaign I think I can do, because I think Cruella is like the least capable. Like Jafar is gonna like turn me into dust. Like Ursula's gonna turn me into a thing. Scar is gonna maul me to death. Like Cruella is like the least likely to kill me. So I think that I'm gonna have to make it work with Cruella.
Okay. I feel you on that. We're gonna have to make it work with Cruella and like help her rebrand. I feel like PETA is gonna be coming for you, but you're gonna
definitely.
But we'll do our best. At least you won't be Duster or a sea urchin. It's fine.
Exactly. This is about self-preservation, is the way I see it.
You're like, at this point, I just have to do what's best for me.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's amazing. Geoffrey, thank you so much for all of these amazing points and conversations. If anyone wants to reach out to you, follow along on your Adventure Snack adventure or anything else, how can they best connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, yes, you can subscribe for free to Adventure Snack at adventuresnack.com. And I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Geoffrey Golden. That's Geoffrey with a G, Geoffrey, like the giraffe, Golden like the color. And yeah, those are the two best ways to get in touch.
Amazing. Well, we very much appreciate you being on the show today. And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you have an amazing day. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you, Rita.
You've been listening to Bippity Boppity Business. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple, or listen to us anywhere you prefer listening to your podcast. Until next time, have a magical day.